most people are not really living. They're surviving. Surviving beliefs they inherited, surviving systems that taught them who they are, surviving inside a very small world while standing inside a much bigger one. Today, I want to talk about thriving, not as positive thinking. That's not really what we're talking about. Not as spiritual bypassing, but as alignment with reality itself. Because here's the truth. Everything is energy. Everything is in motion. Everything vibrates. And vibration has a frequency. Okay? Everything is energy. Everything's in motion. Everything vibrates. And therefore, that vibration has a frequency at which it vibrates. This isn't mysticism. It's just simple physics. Okay? And when you understand that, religion doesn't disappear. It matures. And what I want to do is to take a step from religion to seeing how faith and quantum physics actually go together. How the things that we see in maybe the Bible or other religious books actually line up with what we're seeing in science, what we're seeing in quantum physics especially. Because this is what is really important, is this understanding of what is actually real. What is it that is true reality? That is to say, living at a higher conscious level. We were taught that the world is made of solid things, things like tables, chairs, bodies, buildings. But modern physics tells a very different story. At the most fundamental level, what we call matter is not solid at all. It is energy organized into patterns of vibration. Particles are not tiny marbles. They are excitations in underlying fields. What appears stable is actually movement held in relationship. Atoms are mostly empty space. And the cells in your body are vibrating systems. Your body is a symphony of electrical signals, chemical exchanges, and resonant rhythms. You don't have energy. You are energy, temporarily patterned, if you will. And when you forget that, you shrink yourself into a mode of survival. Religion at its best tried to describe this truth symbolically, such as God is spirit. In him we live and move and have our being. The kingdom is within you. But over time, living metaphors harden into rigid systems. Instead of expansion, we got containment. Instead of curiosity, we got certainty. Instead of transformation, we got compliance. You see that? You see, you can't contain what is, if you will, the universe. You can't contain all that's been created. Your rules can't do it. Your theology can't do it. Your certainty can't do it. Compliance can't do it. Religion has often trained people to live in a small, closed world where truth was finished, questions were dangerous, and authority replaced experience. Can you relate to that? Truth is never finished. We're always discovering. If you're not discovering in your journey, then you're missing the point. There's always more truth to discover. Questions are not dangerous. Questions are normal. And if you're not questioning everything, I encourage you, and you should be questioning everything, then you are exposing yourself to somebody else's agenda versus living by your spiritual, if you will, intuitive nature. And authority should never replace experience. Someone saying, well, this is the truth, should never take over your experience of studying the scriptures or studying science or just your day-to-day life. It should always be second to what your spirit in Christ is doing. Now, that's not faith. That's survival conditioning, which is where most believers live. That's where most Christians and religious people live, based on, trying to put this little world together of religion that somehow is going to say, hey, see, we have it. We have the truth. See, if you just stay compliant, just believe the things that we believe. Stop being curious. Stop asking questions. Just live within these confines and you'll be fine. Well, that's not how it works. And throughout the ages, throughout the 2,000 years of Christian history, that's the way it's been. And so that's not faith. That's not what true faith that Jesus lived is. That's what's called survival conditioning. You're just surviving. You're not thriving like Jesus did. You're not living in this inquisitive nature of the world. You're not seeking out for truth. You're not extending your boundaries. You're not discovering something new and different. You're trying to be compliant. And Jesus wasn't compliant. Matter of fact, he wasn't compliant with anybody. He lived a life outside the boundaries. Thriving requires something of us, which is direct engagement with reality. That is to say, being willing to see the truth in all of its aspects, especially when it comes to quantum reality, quantum physics reality, because it helps us to understand what we talk about as spirit. Physics now tells us something astonishing. What we can see, atoms, bodies, plants, makes up only about 5% of the universe. The rest is unseen. Fields, forces, dark energy, dark matter. The visible arises, though, from the invisible, that which we can't see. This is not a threat to spirituality, This is its invitation, if you will. The quantum field is not nothing. It is potential. It is relationship. It is connection before material form. Do you see that? And consciousness is not separate from this field. Your consciousness and my consciousness is not separate from this unified field of energy. It is participating in this field. We consciously are participating in this conscious field. Your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and intentions are not abstract ideals. They are patterns of energy interacting with larger patterns, which means thriving is not about control. It's about coherence, bringing everything together so that instead of living in this dissonance, we begin to live in coherence. We begin to live in agreement, not only with our identity, but with the truth of who we are as spiritual beings. Now, survival lives in contraction. It's constantly contracting. Fear tightens frequency. Shame lowers our coherence in being able to live in alignment. Chronic stress fragments the system in general. Thriving happens when your inner world, your thoughts, your emotions, your belief system comes into resonance, if you will, with reality as it is, not as you were taught to fear it. And in religion, we were taught to fear things. I think we can all agree that we were probably taught to fear things more than we were taught to live in the joy, if you will, of what is. Love is not just a moral ideal. It's a coherent state. So is peace and so is presence. When religion taught love as obligation, it missed the point. Love isn't an obligation. You have no obligation to try and love God. And what value would that be to God? And what value would it be to you? Very little. Forgiveness is not spiritual weakness. It's a release of energetic distortion. You're letting go of that which is not you. Stillness is not passivity. It's clarity. It's coming to a clear understanding, not only of reality, but of a higher consciousness in general. This is why transformation doesn't happen through willpower. You'll never transform through your willpower. The more you try, the less you get there. The more you focus on it, the less you attain. So that's not the way. It happens through what we would call attunement. Attuned to the resonance, which is the truth, the frequency, if you will, of who you are. Many people sense this, but are afraid to leave the old structure. They're afraid to leave it, not because it's true, but because it's familiar. You see, a lot of times we stay in things, even when we sense they may not be true, but they're safe. Well, most of the time what we seek is safety and comfort, really, security. Those are the things we seek. And people will stay in things that are not true, things that are actually false, because it's familiar. It's just familiar to them, and there's a sense of security and safety. That small world feels safe. The bigger world feels uncertain. You go out into this bigger world, and that feels like it's not something I can really rely on. But here's the paradox. The small world is collapsing precisely because it cannot hold reality anymore. Can't hold it anymore. Thriving now means learning to live without rigid certainty. You don't have to have a rigid certainty to be able to thrive. And discovering something better in the process, which is trust, presence, that is being in the moment. Learning to live in the moment rather than afraid of the future or regretting the past. Inner guidance, learning to live from your inner intuitive self. You see, that's the road to thriving. That's the road really to living from your spirit, is to listen and live from your intuitive higher self, the spirit who you are, the energy being, the powerful energy being that you are. That's what's important. And the more you grow in this intuitive sense and living by your intuition, the more you'll begin to thrive. Then direct knowing. That is, as I live from my intuitive higher self, I begin to just have a knowing. I know what to do. I know what to say. I know what not to say. I know when to act. I know when not to act. All of that is something that then comes into alignment. Now, in this, you don't abandon faith, which we think of as the faith of Christ and all that he's done. You outgrow it into wisdom. That makes sense. You begin to live from an inner wisdom. You begin to live from an inner life. You don't try to have faith. You know. You don't try to believe. You know. You don't try to, follow a certain way of belief system or religion. Now you are the very embodiment of that which you seek. You were never meant to merely survive belief systems, economies, or identities that no longer fit. Okay? That is not what you're called to. You are meant to participate consciously in a living universe, okay, which you are one with, and a universe where everything vibrates. It's constantly in motion, where meaning emerges through relationship, where the unseen gives rise to the material, to the seen. Thriving is not about escaping the world. So many people I know want to escape, especially Christians, people who call themselves believers. They want to escape. What are you talking about? You never see Jesus or the Apostle Paul, for that matter, talking about escaping or getting out of something. Someone says, well, he says he wants to, go on from this world, but he tells the Philippians, he said, listen, if I'd rather stay here because it's better for you. He said, matter of fact, I know I will. So what is he doing? He's saying, listen, I want to be of benefit to others. I want to be a blessing to others. That's why I want to stay. You and I, what does that mean? We have a purpose. There's a reason we're here in this incarnation, in this body. Okay, you have a purpose. Your life is filled with purpose. The problem is you don't see it. All you see is the problems and the hurts and the pains and the obstacles. Begin to live in the reality of all that is true of this world that you are connected to in oneness, in union, and realize as it is true of the universe, it's true of you. It's about seeing it clearly for the first time, seeing this world we live in, seeing ourselves clearly for the first time. And when you do, you will begin to realize that you were never small. You were just taught to live in a small world. You were simply being taught a religion. You were being taught a way to try and keep your world safe. But if you're going to thrive and live from spirit, live from within, live from this true person you are, this higher self, you need to realize that everything is ours. We can live from our intuitive self. We can live the adventure. We can overcome. But more than that, we can thrive, not just survive.